Hello friends, we'll be discussing an illustration which is related to the historical cost method of inventory valuation. So when we speak about historical cost method, we understand we have 5 different methods, out of which 3 are the major important components like FIFO, LIFO and weighted average method. The special or rather the specific identification and the simple average method is the rarest one, so we won't be focusing more on that, although we'll be solving certain problems related to it. But majority of our problems will be related to FIFO, LIFO and weighted average cost itself. So let's start with one of the illustration that has been mentioned here. So the problem one relates to Fatima Malik Company Limited. So the illustration gives you details about this specific company. The company just started its business and made the following inventory purchase in the year 2016 and June, basically June 2016. On June 1, 150 units at the rate of 6.60 per unit cost were purchased. That means the total amounts to 900 rupees. Similarly, on June 10, 200 units at the rate of 6.30 per unit was purchased. Total amounts to 1260 units. June 15, 200 units at the rate of 5.85 units per cost, or rather the 5.85 is the per unit cost, like that 200 units were purchased. Total cost is 1170. June 28, we had 150 units at the rate of 5.20 per unit cost. Total cost is 780. So all the cost amounted to 4200. Now, a physical count of the merchandise inventory shows that 250 units were still on hand. That means that was the closing stock. Now, we have to do two things here. We have to use FIFO and LIFO method. The first requirement here is we have to use the LIFO method and figure out what is the value of the inventory at the end of June 30. Now, the second requirement is using the periodic FIFO method, we have to figure out the cost of inventory, or rather the amount of cost of goods sold in June. That is what we have to figure out. So the question has been made clear to you. Let's go and start with the working first. We'll first figure out the requirement A, that is LIFO method. So for working, we'll do one thing. We'll mention all the dates first. So when we are talking about LIFO, we have been mentioned that the closing stock amounts to 250 units. So now LIFO refers to last in first out. So whatever quantity came in the last, that means 15th and 20th, has been taken out first. So to give you a specific idea, June 15th and 20th is out of question. Whatever is pending will be taken into consideration. So we'll be taking June 1 and June 10 for our format here. So now if you have to figure out the cost of inventory left, rather the cost of inventory that is left with us, we'll have to take June 1 and June 10, because 250 units is equivalent to the last two, or rather the first two that were taken. So we mentioned quantity, we mentioned rate, and we mentioned the total amount. On the left hand side, we'll mention the date as well. So the first date will be June 1 because last in first out method is used. Had it been first in first out, June 1 and June 10 would have been gone out. On June 1, we took 150 units. The rate is 6.60. Now on June 10. Now if you see, June 10 we have 200 units and we require only 100 units to complete 250. So out of that 200, we'll be taking only 100 units because rest other things we have assumed that everything has been utilized. So utilization has been done for all the units except for 250 units. So for 250 units, the first one that we have already taken, the second one out of the 200 will be taking only 100 because other 100 has been already utilized. Now the other 100 will be taken at the rate which has been mentioned there. Now the simple thing that we have to do is find out the amount. So for June 1, the total amount is 990. And for June 10, we have the total amount as 630. Now, that is the value of the closing stock. So total addition will give you the actual value of 250 closing stock. So as per the requirement A, which stated that we need to figure out what is the value of the closing stock as per the LIFO method, we have figured out. So the cost of 250 units is the total amount of 990 plus 630. So now that we have figured out the requirement A has been fulfilled, we have to go and figure out what is the requirement 2 here. That means requirement B as mentioned in the question. So requirement A, value of closing stock as per LIFO method has been figured out. Now requirement B states that amount allocated to the cost of goods sold as per the FIFO method we have to figure out. This is as per FIFO method. That means what we have to figure out is how many goods have been sold out basically. So again we'll mention the date, quantity, rate and amount. Now when we're talking about cost of goods sold, that means how many goods have been sold out. So the total of all quantity comes to around 700 quantity here. That means this total comes to 700 quantity. Out of that 250 is the closing stock. That means 450 units have been sold out. So we have to figure out 450 units have been sold out. What is the cost of it? So for 450 units, we'll be taking the first item. That means FIFO, that is first in, first out. So we'll be taking the whole of it. So now for 450, we'll divide it into 3 parameters or rather 3 segments. If you see on June 1, we have a quantity of 150. So we can take the whole 150 together. So out of 450, 150 is gone. So balance left is 300 items. That means 300 items are yet to be adjusted. Now, how will you adjust those 300 items? Let's go on to June 10. We have 200 quantity. That means that can be also taken completely. That's right. Now, only 100 items are pending. Now, on June 15th, we have another 200 quantity. Do we require the whole 200 quantity or only the partial 100 out of it? Because we need to complete only 100 to get the total of 450. So we'll be taking only 100 out of that quantity. So that has been mentioned here. Now we have a total of 450 units. Now we can mention the rates and we can figure out what is the total cost of it. Now 150 units were at the rate of 6.60 per unit. 200 quantity was at the rate of 6.30 per unit, and those 200 quantities later on, after which we took only 100 quantities at the rate of 5.85 per unit. So let's multiply and figure out what is the amount that is mentioned in the amount column. So we mentioned the amount as well. For the first one it is 990. For the second one it is 1260. And for the third one it is 585. Let's calculate the total of all this. So the value of all the cost is 2835 for 450 units. Therefore, the cost of goods sold, that means 450 units as per FIFO method, will be 200 or rather 2835 rupees here. So that is the answer that we are looking for. So FIFO and LIFO is very easy only if you go ahead and practice very well as to which item has to be taken into consideration and how much quantity is supposed to be taken into consideration, because you might end up taking the whole balance but it is not required. So only partial balance is supposed to be required only in the last stage of it. So this is how you solve the problem related to FIFO and LIFO. I hope this illustration was clear enough to give you a rough idea about how to go ahead with the format of LIFO and FIFO here. So thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and keep subscribing to Ekeeda.